That was very good, Eric. Here, eat this cupcake.
No thanks, I'm not hungry.
But you are. Just eat this one cupcake. It has sprinkles.
I'm not eating the cookie.
Eric, do you know what a hero is? A hero is somebody who sacrifices himself for the good of others. You can be a hero, Eric. All you have to do is eat the cupcake.
Obedience is defined as compliance with an order, request, or law, or submission to another's authority. Basically, obedience is a person's willingness to comply with another's request. Obedience is mainly seen in society as respecting authority figures. Obedience appears to be a relatively straightforward concept, with most people being able to be identified as submissive or rebellious, or somewhere in between. However, the immediate expectation of obedience starts to blur when put under certain situations. Milgram's studies of obedience are the most well-known and most cited studies on obedience. It also consumes all but one of the results of the first page of a Google search for obedience studies. But since 1, you should really know what the contents of this experiment are by now, 2, I can't actually use this study as the main study for this project. However, I am going to be referencing it quite a bit since it's literally the basis of knowledge for obedience in the psychological field. To say the least, the experiment yielded some shocking results. Anywho, onto the nuances of obedience. Obedience learning begins at a very young age, as children are stupid, will most likely die without obedience in their life. At a young age, children are taught to respect their parents, teachers, and authority figures. This carries over to adulthood, as most people still show obedience towards people of high standing and authority. This could easily be seen in people's dealings with common authority figures, such as police, as most people could easily listen to their demands. Now, the 3 important concepts of obedience that we learned from Milgram's studies are known as such: the foot in the door effect, attitude confusion, and buffers. Foot in the door effect is the tendency for people to listen to bigger demands after they've been told to do smaller tasks. This is the most obvious effect tested in Milgram's experiment, as all participants would always start on low voltage of 15. They would slowly move up to a higher voltage, and it wasn't until the other participant was in obvious pain did they begin to show concern. Had the first shock been a big hearty dose of 400 volts right off the bat, the experiment probably would have ended a bit quicker. Essentially, it's simple to force people into nefarious acts and just, ease them into it. People are often certain of what their reaction would be to most situations at any given time. This is because everyone has an attitude that typically conforms to a specific line of thinking when it comes to obeying the demands of others. As an example, most people would clearly listen to the request of a police officer, and the ones who would go against them are usually fairly obvious. Although a person saying they'll shrug off the cops and them actually doing it when put into a situation is quite different.
Let go of the keys. No, they're my keys. Let go of the keys. All right.
This is another result of Milgram's study, during which it was found out that people are more likely to go against their own pre-designated decisions if they're put in situations that confuse, disturb, or bring them out of their element. Loud screaming and wall pounding during the experiment put the participants off edge and influenced their decision-making by making them doubt themselves. Last observation taken from the experiment was that it's easier for people to listen to demands if they aren't directly shown the consequences of their actions, creating a buffer between the person and the result of their actions, make it simpler for them to carry out difficult tasks. If a person doesn't see the result of their actions, how can they feel responsible for it? And before I wrap this up, I would like to briefly bring up another study. Remember when I said when you Google search obedience study, all but one of the results are just Milgram's studies? Well, let's talk about that but one. C.K. Hoffling decided to do an experiment on 3 local hospitals involving a few unsuspecting nurses and sugar pills. He would call nurses separately, posing as Dr. Smith. Hoffling asked if they had the drug Astrotin, which they would always have. Then he would ask them to administer 20 milligrams to the patient, Mr. Jones, despite the fact that the bottle clearly stated that the maximum dose was 10 milligrams. 21 out of the 22 nurses complied with this request. All the nurses who carried out this request were breaking 3 very important hospital rules. 1, they cannot accept instructions given over the phone, especially ones given by an unconfirmed doctor. 2, never exceed the clearly prescribed maximum dosage. And 3, no unauthorized use of a medicine that's not on the ward stock list, which aspartame was not. As said earlier, the drug was simply a sugar pill, and the patient, Mr. Jones, and the hospital administrators were all in on it. However, all but one of the nurses were unaware that they had just willingly committed a fireable offense. Afterwards, the nurses were all surveyed, and 21 out of the 22 said that in a similar situation, under similar circumstances, they would not comply with the request of the phone doctor. I thought it was important to include this study in this presentation, as it shows very clearly how much people really do respect authority figures, and how willing they are to conform to their needs. So, what do we take from all this? What does obedience mean in our daily lives? Obedience is an important part of our lives, as it teaches us to respect authority figures, but more importantly, it teaches us to listen to others' requests. And I suppose Milgram's study also taught us something as well, more so how to manipulate people using obedience, rather than just, general use of it. But, that's fun too.
It's the fine time of my time and now. You can't give me my time and now. Can't forget my fella, my nanny, what Michelle. And we can't burn when the thing when the jello. Ain't give me a man than the fellow. And the walk in and the man than the quello. She butter, a wine that the.
What do you think you should have done?